Hello everyone, Toko here with a toy review. Today we're going to be looking at the Transformers Legacy Velocitron-Speedia-500 collection. We have G2 Universe Road Rocker, Blurr, and Diaclone Burn Out. All three of these are repaints from other existing figures, namely the Studio Series Blurr, the Prime Universe RC, and the Legacy Skids respectively. So without any further ado, let's take these figures out of the box and into the we've taken the figures out of their boxes. Let's take a quick look at the vehicle mode since this is what they are packaged in. Starting off here with Blurr. Let's get that too. Blurr is the only one of these three figures that is not just a repaint but also a slight remold from the original, specifically this area here with two wheels. They're not actually movable, unfortunately, and the new nose cone is different, but other than that it's just a different paint scheme. Though I do have to admit this is probably the best of the three compared to the original Studio Series and the Shattered Glass. I think this is the best paint scheme. I don't have those two on me for comparison, but overall it's just the darker blues with the lighter blues and then shades of kinda gray, but even the gray has some hints of blue in it. It just works very well and I really like this. Going on next to Road Rocket, a repaint of the Prime Universe RC, which I need to admit I did not like that original figure. But I do have to say that while I'm still not a fan of the mold itself, I do think that the red with the kind of shiny blue here works much better, and in bike mode the figure does look really good aside from the obvious fists on the backside. And then lastly we have Burnout, which is a repaint of Skids, and this is one that again I need to admit I really like the black and red more than the original blue and red, though it is the one I dislike the least of all three of these figures, just because I think the original blue and red is also just very good, and there is some nice detailing there. Let's see if we can get right there. Inside is very nicely detailed, which is very cool, though like I showed off earlier, you just have the robot head like right there, and it's just, it looks good from the front and when you're looking at it straight, but if you look at it from the bottom, not that good, which is a shame. Blurr has the same issues. From the bottom it's awful, but from the top it's great. And then Road Rocket, not as much. You still have kind of the robot head, but you can barely see it in there, so it doesn't look half bad. So now let's go into some size comparisons. Road Rocket here we have, since it's a G2 figure, we're comparing it to the G2 Megatron, and as you can tell the scale is completely off just because being a deluxe the motorcycle is just way too big to properly scale, but I do have to admit that next to each other these two look really good. For Burnout, going with the Diaclone colors, it just made the most sense to compare it to the recently released Diaclone colors Twin Twist in the Wreck and Roll collection, and these two just look a lot better next to each other than Rocket and G2 Megatron did. For Blurr, I don't have any other Studio Series with me on hand, so I just thought the best comparison would be next to a fellow fast car, that being the Legacy drag strip, and I think these two just look really good together. The scale works perfectly. The size comparisons is over, and let's take a look at the transformation. Very easy transformation for all three of these guys. The robot modes that we end up with look absolutely stunning. Taking a closer look at Blurr first, we just see that head sculpt, let's get that head sculpt, is just fantastic. It looks very, very nice. The blues just work so well. The sculpting and detail is just fantastic. You even have little grooves inside the little rectangles next to the face. Then the detailing on the arms is just stunning. There's so much detail work going on with this guy, even down to the legs. So though the legs are for the most part the exact same as the Studio series, it's mostly the head and the shoulders, and obviously the kibble pieces, which are undeniably the ugly part of the figure. Just giant kibble slabs just right there under the arm. But aside from that, it looks really, really good. And it comes with two accessories, the same as the Studio series. We have Blurr's gun here, which is very nicely sculpted and detailed. It just fits into his hand just very easily. And the other accessory we get is this little oil deployer. Zoom, if it would like to zoom in, it does not. But it also just plugs into his hand pretty easily, and it just provides a cool look, all armed up with his gun and the gas can thing. Setting him off to the side. Next we have Road Rocket, which is still looks very, very good. The red is very nice. The purple for the mask, or like I guess it's more of an indigo color for the arms and the legs, looks very, very good. It's just a shame that the mold itself is not the best. There's giant pieces of kibble on the legs and just the whole front of a motorcycle on the back. It's just not very good as a mold, but the paint itself is very good, and there is some light piping thanks to that giant clear plastic on the back of the head. And something that I do need to mention, the knees always look so weird to me because there's just so much space between the kneecap and the actual knee joint that it tends to look really, really off, especially from the front. Now for accessories we get, technically two, but really one. First we have the little pizza cutter here that RC also came with, though I have to admit, compared to the RCs, this one is much better because you actually have the star painted on the inside. It's still not that good, and it can plug in like so into any of the ports on the hand. It would like to go in. Sometimes it can be a bit tight on my copy, and that doesn't look very good. And the other way you can do it is take it off and you can split it apart, and you can put one on each side of the arm, which does look better, but still not that good in my opinion. It looks better than RC's, but that's about it. And then lastly, the final accessory, though not really, is just, oh yeah, that's another issue I've had with this figure. It just keeps falling off. The feet are not the most stable. Anyways, the final accessory is the bike mode's entire wheel that just comes off during transformation, and you can just pop it open like so. And this is something that, if I remember correctly, RC's was painted on the inside. This one is pure red, but either way, it plugs into the hand like so. It's really tight fit, honestly. It doesn't even want to go in right now. Sorry for the focus, but the figure does not want to grab it whatsoever. Okay. So that hand is just not grabbing it whatsoever. So let's see if it plugs into the other hand. There we go. And it's just kind of doesn't really do much. I don't even know what it's actually supposed to do. And then the other thing, you could also plug it into the arm, but same thing, doesn't look very good. And then what I like to do to improve the look of the figure itself is that there is a port right behind the neck, right there. And there you can just plug this in like so. The back of the bike fell off. That happens a lot. This figure is, it looks very good, but it's not the most solid feeling. There we go. And that looks much, much better in my opinion. The addition of the wheels is a must for this figure, if you ask me. Now setting him off to the side, we have the final figure, Diaclone Burn Out, and undeniably this, I have to admit, is my favorite of the figures. Taking a look back a bit so we can see a bit more of him. It just looks, the black, the red, and the blue looks very nice. You can also fold up this piece a bit to give the windscreen on the back, but I prefer to just fold it down. And it's just, it looks absolutely stunning. Taking a closer look here, it just looks so good. The only real issue with the figure is that it is hollow on the inside, but unlike Skids, it's not as big a deal. It is still a issue with the figure, but it's not as big a deal because of the black plastic that the figure itself is. The hollowness kind of blends in from afar, although it is still an issue. And then for accessories, Burn Out undeniably has the most, because you have this gun that's made out of two guns that you just split apart like it is a very tight fit, so I should not have put it inside, put them together before the review. There we go. There we go. We have these two guns. This one, which it's not that good because of the way the handle works. When you plug it into the hand, it just kind of looks a bit too high up. Doesn't look very well. And then the G1 inspired, oh, that fell off, sorry for that. The G1 blaster, that's just the dual barrels that you can plug either into his hand, which looks very good, or you can plug it into the pegs inside the arm itself, which not as good in my opinion, unless you use the articulation that we'll get into later to just kind of do like a arm rock like that to shoot. But when the hand is straight up, it just looks a bit too far back. Personally, my preferred look is the two weapons combined, like so. There's a hole in there, the peg just goes in, and voila. And that is my preferred weapon of choice for this guy. And then we also have the Energon axe, I guess. You can use it as an axe like so, and that looks pretty fine. And you can use it as a blaster like so, if it would like to stay in the hand. There we go. And that doesn't look as good in my opinion. And lastly, you can put it on the weapon itself, which, yeah, it doesn't look that bad. Not my preferred look for this weapon, but it does work. And that's it for the accessories and the looks. So now we can go into the posability for each of these figures. So starting with Burn Out, since we have them right here, you have a hinge here and then a hinge here for the arm, so you can get some very, very nice long poses for the arms. We have a swivel right above the elbow, bend at the elbow that goes 90 degrees, maybe a bit more, and a swivel at the wrist that can be a bit tight without the weapon, so I prefer to do it with the weapon on hand. Same for the other arm, hinges here, swivel, bend, swivel. See what I mean? That if you try to move the hand alone, it'll end up moving the entire arm. Then for the hips, we have forward that far, we have back not that far, though if you move the backpack up a bit, it goes farther. And beautiful spread here. Then we have knees a bit past 90 degrees. I can't really tell because of the shape of the leg itself, but same on the other side, and some beautiful ankle pivots. For Road Rocket here, we have the arm going out that far and a swivel that goes off 360, but because of the wheel it will clash, so if you just take that off it will go back. Swivel above the elbow, 90 degree bend at the elbow. The hands do swivel a bit, but because of the arm guard, they do tend to clash a lot. Same for the other arm. Then for the legs, we have a beautiful spread. The leg can kick forward. Ignore the knee there. It goes forward that far, and it surprisingly goes back very far, like a lot back. And then you have the knee itself. You have to be sure to, if the focus would get in, you have to be sure to grab the leg itself as you bend it, because if you try to just bend one, sometimes you have that happen where they just kind of disengage. And then same for the other leg, and you could consider a backwards ab crunch, but it's more for the transformation. And then a really good ankle pivot, and the feet themselves can kind of move, but I would not recommend it just because these feet are so thin that they tend to not be able to support the weight of the figure that much. But setting her off to the side. Lastly, we have Blurr, which in my opinion is the best when it comes to articulating, even though the arms are not as extreme as Burn Out, just because he tends to hold this weight the best. So we have a rotation at the arm here, and it is, I don't know if the mic is picking it up, but it is a soft ratchet, which helps with it feeling the most solid. We have a bend at the elbow there, and a swivel at the elbow. Hands, if we take off the weapon, you have to disconnect it, but they do swivel all 360. And the same for the other side. All the exact same. Then for the legs, it kicks forward that far, kicks back that far, bend at the knee at nice to 90 degrees, and an ankle pivot. It is the weakest of the pivots, but it does also feel the best when moving it. And then I forgot to mention, but all three of these feature some really nice head articulation, side to side, up and down. And now let's go into some size comparisons.